I've received clear instructions. I have 50. Well, I'll be very quick. Father Abraham, you should have had one of the directors from Trussell Trust, but unfortunately, due to the funeral in the family, unfortunately, you have me today. Now, the mistake you can have is to have an African and give them 15 minutes. So I'll try to whiz through this. You already have the paper for this presentation, but also if you would like to have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, you'll be more than welcome. So I would like to begin by just giving you the background to food banks. So the first food bank that was ever started was in the early 2000s, and this was through a church in Salisbury, St. Paul's Church there. But it grew exponentially in the 2012 to 2014 there through the network, the New Wine Network of churches, which most of you would probably know about. Now, today we've got about 423 food banks. We have 1,438 food bank centers. For those of you who are familiar with the multi-site kind of setting, that's what it is like. So you have the main food bank, and some of these food banks do have other centers which provide the services. And the average is about 60 volunteers who are regular in each one of these food banks. And I'd probably say 82% of food banks have a paid member of staff that look after our food banks. Now, although you have heard, as was referred to, about the great work that this network is doing, the amazing network and all the work that they're doing, we believe that no one should need a food bank in the UK. Everyone should have enough money to cover the cost of essentials, and no charity, and I believe that you would believe with me, you would agree with me, that no charity can replace the dignity of buying your own food. So it is time for change. And for that change to happen, each one of you in this room have a part to play. You know, as I entered and walked through this room, I felt like I was walking through the Council of Jerusalem where the apostles were. Every time there was a crisis in the early church, it is the church and the leaders that came together to have conversations and talk through these issues about how they were going to respond to the need. Now, A State of Hunger, which is a landmark piece of research into who needs a food bank and why these people show up to depend on the food bank, has this to share. It says that the average weekly income of people at food banks, this is the people who come to access the food bank services, is £50, and that is after paying their rent. And almost 1 in 5 have no money at all coming in the month before they were referred to the food emergency. 95% of people at food banks are destitute. Almost 3/4 of people at food banks live in households that is affected by ill health or disability, and you see these people coming to access our food bank services. We have about 22% of people at food banks that are single parents, and that is compared to the 5% of the UK population. And more than 3/4 of people referred to our food banks were in arrears. And we have proof from the stats that we gather from the people that access our services. So let me talk to you a little bit about what it looks like for a food bank. And this is for each and every food bank that we have across the UK. For the first time, on the other side of the pandemic, we had 2.1 million food parcels given out to people. And that is between 2021 and 2022. Now, the way we collect our stats as Trussell is we collect the stats according to the financial year, that is from April to March. So the stats that you have are for 21 to 22. We are yet to have the stats for this financial year, but would you believe it? In the first 6 months of this financial year alone, we distributed over 1.3 million food parcels. Now, just think about that. And the need continues to rise. It is rising. And I know that we have a big ambition, we have this ambitious vision, and we are working hard towards it. But right now, the need for food banks is only increasing, 48% increase. And that is only from March, compared to March last year. there is 48% of increase. Now, these are some of the statements that we've had from some of our food banks. I'm sure you're not surprised that the reason for this increase is the cost of living crisis. And right now, according to the research that we carry out, this is one of the biggest drivers that is causing people to have to depend on food parcels. And here, let me just read to you a few statements that people have said from our food banks. They've said that the principal reason for what has been a massive increase in referrals and demands for the food bank has been the cost of living crisis. Since the start of 2022, we have seen a steady increase in people both in the work and out of work who are simply unable to manage on the money they have. Unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in people who have exhausted the traditional routes of increasing income and etc., but are simply just not getting enough to get by. Here's another one. The war in Ukraine the war in Ukraine, many Ukrainian guests are being hosted in our area. And so these are the people who have come and are being hosted in this country, and they've had to access our services. Let me just read one more. The cost of living crisis, the increasing cost of food, energy, and petrol has increased the number of people we've fed over the summer months by 35%. And the number of people we've helped with energy costs by 120% in comparing to the last summer, which is June, July, and August. So, what are some of the challenges that the network, the Trussell Trust network, are facing, and how have we responded to these challenges? I want to give you just a few key themes and how we've responded to that before I get my 5 minutes warning. So I'm gonna rush through this. I won't read each one of them. Feel free to take photographs or feel free to come and see me. I'll provide this to you. So the first key theme that we keep hearing from different food banks is the new groups of people. So we've got families, increase in families that are coming, more people who are in work. In fact, we've had lots of reports from, for example, from the police or from the NHS, that we have people even from, people who are working having to access the food emergency parcels. And so we've had to have our food banks open in the evenings, over weekends, in order to enable the people who are at work to be able to come and access the food bank services. And so all we can say is that life in itself, living and doing life in itself is so expensive, and that is the general consensus from the public. So what is our response as Trussell? And I would like to say this is the biggest response that we've had to the first key theme. We are calling it the Guarantee Our Essentials campaign. And this is the campaign that we are trying to partner with different organizations and different churches to come together to be able to speak with one voice, as we heard earlier on, to the government. And the reason is because the majority of the people that are being referred to our food banks are there because they faced an expected crisis, like losing a job, or a relationship breakdown, or a bereavement. And unfortunately, our social security does not act as a safety net it is meant to be. Whatever we think, it never does. And the basic rate of the universal credit should at least cover the cost of the essentials. And what we mean by essentials at Trussell, it's things like food or household bills or travel costs. And yet, it is currently set, the way that the universal credit is set, according to any objective assessment, is not able to meet the needs of the people. 90% of the low-income households receiving universal credit are going without at least one essential, like food, a warm home, or even simple things like toiletries, which I believe in this room we don't even think about it. But there's so many people who are going without this in order for them to afford other things that are necessary. That means there's a significant shortfall between people's living cost and their income, which is forcing many to skip meals, switch off essential appliances such as fridges, and turn off their heating. That's why We at Trussell are working in partnership with the Joseph Roundtree Foundation to call for an essentials guarantee within the universal credit system, which means that at least the basic rate can cover life's essentials, and support can never be put below that level to which it is right now. Let me quickly go through this. The next one, the key theme that we keep hearing is at the stock levels. There's need for food banks outside streams. Thank you. I'm an African boy. Thank you for reminding me.
Just over a minute.
Sorry?
Just over a minute.
Okay, so the stock levels, there's need for food. The need was outstripped, as you can see from 2021. The donations that was needed to be able to purchase the food rose up from 770 to 1,400. Okay, very quickly, let me just talk to you about our response. You can see there we've had responses from the public. We had, towards the end of the year, we had our first public appeal from our chief executive, and the response from the public was amazing. We've had to provide about £2 million. Just go back. Yeah, we've had to provide about £2 million of food to food banks to be able to purchase food in the last 4 to 6 months alone. And we've partnered with retailers who are providing food. We've had to provide food banks with food raising guidances, like the collections at Christmas. I was in some of the Tesco and some of the retailers, and the response is overwhelmingly generous. So these are some of the ways in which we have responded. I'm going to skip through these, some of the ways in which we have supported our work. I have the graph there, and I just want to quickly, in a minute, just say, how can the church respond to the crisis? Now, it's been amazing that already we have heard the challenge that we had earlier on. And as I've been reflecting about this, I've been thinking about Acts chapter 6 and Galatians chapter 2. If you get a chance, please do have a look at it. But in chapter 6, you find that the apostles came together and said, instead of us focusing on the food projects, why don't we choose the people that are able to do that so that we can focus on prayer and the word? What are you seeing there? It is exactly what the previous presenter said, the prophetic and the pragmatic coming together. And Paul, in Galatians chapter 2, in verse 10, he's talking about how they recognize the grace of God upon his life. And he says these words. He says that he said they recognized the grace for which I operated towards the two. And they said all they asked was that we should continue to remember the poor, the very thing I had been eager to do all along. What I'm seeing here is partnership. It's not either or. It is coming together as one voice, coming together as a force. And the church, we have a powerful force together if we respond. The first thing I want to say, though, is that you are already doing that. You are already doing that. You can see in the stats where a lot of the food banks are in the churches. A lot of the provision that is provided is from the churches. The resource that we have in volunteers is coming from the church. You can see how many churches we work with. The percentage there, 55%. And at least each one of these centers is connected with a church. So, I just want to leave these things with you to ponder. How else could local churches support food banks practically, financially, pastorally in these challenging times? We all know that we are facing challenging times. How could the church continue to use its voice and influence to call for change, mainly to the political system that we have? You have been called and God has given you authority. You have such a powerful force to be able to bring influence and usher in change. And finally, what do people facing destitution and deep poverty experience in our churches? Thank you so much for your time.